The most dangerous position you can be in is being the person everyone watches while you're just trying to mind your own business. Think about it. You walk into a room, perhaps a corporate boardroom, a high-stakes networking event, or a quiet social gathering, not looking for attention, but you get it anyway. Your posture is relaxed, your focus is internal, and you possess no desire to dominate the space. Yet the moment the door closes behind you, the atmospheric pressure shifts. Conversations subtly dip, glances are traded, and an invisible weight anchors itself to your presence. This is not a flex. It is a psychological target on your back. The paradox of your existence lies within this unprovoked tension. You seek absolute invisibility, yet you achieve maximum prominence. In a modern world driven by a hyperfixation on public validation, human beings do not stare at you because they admire you. They stare because your natural detachment signals that you do not need them. You are operating on a completely different psychological currency. While the average individual relies on the constant exhausting feedback loop of social approval, you walk in perfectly fine in your own skin. By simply existing without asking for permission, you accidentally expose their deepest, most fragile insecurities. This creates a profound friction. Your quiet confidence does not scream, but to an insecure ego, it is deafening. They look at your silence and wonder, who does this person think they are? They cannot fathom a mind that is self-contained because their own internal state is entirely dependent on external applause. Consequently, your equilibrium is misread as an act of defiance, an unprovoked psychological attack against the social order of the room. Without saying a word, your gravity has disrupted the unspoken hierarchy. But how exactly does a room full of hidden chaos respond to an anchor of stability? It does not happen randomly. Human nature follows strict, predictable scripts when confronted with something it cannot control. Today, we are opening up the terrifying psychology of why your quiet confidence feels like a direct threat to everyone else around you. We are moving past the surface-level discomfort to break down the dark, unfiltered science of human behavior. To survive this invisible battlefield, you must first learn to decode the exact behavioral mechanisms the crowd uses to neutralize your weight. This structural warfare manifests in highly specific ways, leading us directly into the calculated reactions we must dissect next, the distinct multi-dimensional patterns of human recognition. When you upset the social equilibrium of a room merely by existing, the crowd does not remain passive. It reacts. Human nature operates on deeply ingrained survival mechanisms, and when confronted with a psychological baseline, it cannot read. It deploys a series of highly predictable behavioral patterns. These are not random acts of hostility. They are structured defensive maneuvers designed to neutralize the threat of your quiet confidence. To navigate this invisible battlefield without losing your peace, you must learn to recognize these 8 distinct multidimensional signs of silent warfare. The first structural response begins with what can be called the narrative deficit. Because you choose to mind your own business and refuse to overshare your life for cheap social points, your mind remains a complete black box. Human beings suffer from intense psychological discomfort when they encounter someone they cannot easily read or categorize. To resolve this internal tension, their brains automatically construct entirely fictional narratives about you. The insecure person will look at your silence and tell others that you are arrogant. The individual who thrives on chaos and drama will decide you are hiding a dark, malicious secret. None of these stories have a single thing to do with your actual character. You are simply a blank mirror, and the room is desperately projecting its own deep-seated inadequacies onto your silence. When these fabricated rumors fail to shake your composure, the insecure performers in the room shift from passive projection to active testing. These are the individuals who survive by dominating social settings through talking the loudest and commanding the most attention. Because your presence signals a natural authority without you ever opening your mouth, it disrupts their fragile monopoly. Their immediate defense mechanism is to run a quick status test. You will catch them making subtle, passive-aggressive jabs masked as jokes or intentionally cutting you off mid-sentence. They are testing your boundaries to see if you are actually solid or just putting on an act. If you get defensive or match their anger, they win because you have stepped down into their chaotic arena. But when you look at them with flat indifference, you entirely dissolve their social power. Failing to break your boundaries, the crowd often resorts to a more exhausting tactic, performative ignorance. This comes from a group that makes a hyper-calculated effort to completely ignore you. This is not normal, organic indifference. It is an aggressive, performative ghosting of your existence. If you speak, they will intentionally stare at their phone. If you walk past their table, they will suddenly find something fascinating to look at on the opposite wall. This happens because your presence forces them to confront their own social inadequacy, and looking at you feels like a direct insult to their fragile ego. By aggressively pretending you do not exist, they are desperately trying to convince themselves that you hold no power over them. Ironically, their forced avoidance is the loudest form of validation they could possibly give you. While the highly insecure actively resist you, another segment of the room succumbs to your gravitational pull through an involuntary phenomenon called behavioral tracking. This reaction comes from the quiet observers who secretly respect your boundaries, but lack the courage to implement them in their own lives. When you sit down, your stable, unbothered energy naturally anchors the chaotic space. Within 10 minutes, you will notice specific individuals unconsciously replicating your physical state. If you lean back and cross your arms, look across the table, someone else will mirror that exact stance within 60 seconds. In a room full of social noise, your detachment acts like a psychological baseline. Their minds are racing, trying to figure out how to look composed, so they naturally sync their physical frequency with yours, to borrow a piece of your unbothered aura. As your unbothered aura establishes itself as the baseline, you will notice an even stranger dynamic unfold among the social chameleons who constantly shift their opinions depending on who holds the power. Without asking for a single shred of leadership, you suddenly become the ultimate emotional compass of the environment. When someone else tells a story or starts an argument, the chameleons will not even look at the person speaking. Instead, their eyes will immediately dart straight to your face to see how you are reacting. They are subconsciously checking if you approve, if you are amused, or if you find the display pathetic. Your silent nod or flat indifference carries more psychological weight than the vocal agreement of the entire crowd. However, being the benchmark of the room inevitably invites the most toxic element of the battlefield, the ghost race. There are people who will not mock you, and they will not ignore you. Instead, they quietly enter a competition you aren't even running. If you buy a specific understated jacket, they will buy a flashier, more expensive version the next week. If you talk about a modest project, they will suddenly announce a massive, world-changing plan. They treat your lifestyle like a personal insult to theirs. They do not want to destroy you. They are desperately trying to outdo you, just to prove to their own bleeding egos that they can match your level. Your existence triggers a permanent, exhausting competition in their minds. Where you are the benchmark, they are killing themselves to beat, while you are literally just living your life. Because this constant competition is entirely one-sided, these individuals inevitably grow tired of chasing your shadow and begin to hunt for a glitch in your system. They look at how smoothly you carry yourself and realize they cannot match your consistent, unbothered posture. Their immediate coping mechanism is to wait for your fumble. They are actively studying your hands to see if they shake when you pick up a drink, or analyzing the inflection of your voice to see if it cracks under pressure. The exact microsecond you show a flash of normal human hesitation, a wave of invisible relief washes over the room. They desperately want you to stumble because your daily confidence is a constant painful reminder of their own chaotic lack of self-control. If a visible stumble does not occur, the final most insidious defense mechanism is deployed: emotional anchoring. This is the subtle, toxic phenomenon of trying to kill your vibe. You will notice that whenever you enter a space with high energy, looking sharp, or just feeling genuinely good, a specific person will immediately make a passing comment to deflate your mood. They will drop a subtle complaint about the weather, bring up a stressful work deadline, or casually point out a minor negative detail in the room. They are not just being moody. It is a calculated psychological defense mechanism. Because your positive, unbothered presence makes them feel painfully aware of their own internal chaos, they cannot handle the contrast. Instead of raising their own energy to match yours, their survival instinct forces them to pull you down into their negative state, to make the room feel safe for their own misery. Navigating a room when your mere presence triggers this many conflicting behavioral patterns is undeniably a heavy burden. Every look, every whisper, every forced ignore, and every subtle jab is a symptom of a much larger systemic friction. But recognizing these patterns is only the first step of the journey. While understanding how the room reacts allows you to stay detached, it does not erase the energetic toll this silent warfare takes on your mind. Moving through a world that constantly projects its insecurities onto your stability requires an immense amount of psychological stamina. To truly master this raw gravity, we must move beyond the reactions of the crowd and confront the true internal tax of being the anchor, the hidden exhausting cost that threatens to break you from the inside out. Carrying raw gravity is not a passive luxury. It is a relentless war of attrition that extracts a heavy, invisible tax from your psychological reserves. When you possess an unbothered posture, the world assumes you are made of stone, completely impervious to the friction your presence creates. They see the smooth surface of your composure, but they never witness the internal mechanics required to maintain it while navigating an environment built entirely on fragile egos and hidden chaos. Moving through life under the constant surveillance of insecure eyes means walking through a psychological minefield every single day. A minefield where you did not plant the mines yet. You are the only one forced to carefully map their locations just to preserve your basic peace of mind. The primary hidden cost of this dynamic is the profound isolation that comes from becoming the room's permanent mirror. When you refuse to overshare your life or engage in shallow social trading, people stop viewing you as a human being with flaws, fatigue, and normal emotional needs. Instead, you are reduced to a blank canvas onto which an entire room projects its deepest, most toxic inadequacies. When someone treats you with unprovoked passive aggressiveness or goes out of their way to performatively ignore you, they are not actually interacting with you. They are fighting a private, agonizing war with their own perceived social insignificance, using your calm exterior as the battlefield. Realizing that the majority of human interactions around you are merely transactional defense mechanisms is a deeply lonely experience. You are constantly surrounded by people, yet you are utterly isolated because they are too blinded by their own insecurity to see your actual humanity. This continuous exposure to projected hostility breeds a unique form of chronic mental fatigue. Even if you possess the psychological mastery to remain flatly indifferent to their status tests and whispered narratives, the sheer volume of conflicting forces hitting your energy field takes a silent, accumulating toll. It requires an immense amount of active subconscious energy to constantly dissolve social pressure, to smile politely through transparently fake conversations, and to remain anchored when someone is actively trying to kill your vibe with calculated negativity. You are forced to operate as a high-functioning emotional filter for the space you occupy. Over time, this unspoken responsibility creates a heavy energetic deficit, leaving you feeling profoundly drained after simple social gatherings or routine days at the office, wondering why a life spent simply minding your own business feels like a constant, exhausting siege. As this fatigue deepens, it inevitably triggers a dangerous, insidious survival mechanism within your own mind, the temptation to shrink. When you realize that your natural confidence, your sharp intellect, or your quiet composure acts as an accidental trigger for the people around you, your brain begins searching for a way to minimize the friction. A subtle, corrupting thought enters your consciousness, suggesting that if you just dim your light, perhaps the room will finally leave you alone. You face the intense temptation to dumb down your insights during meetings, to speak with less certainty, to dress below your standards, or to artificially manufacture flaws just to make average, chaotic people feel safe and comfortable in your presence. This is the ultimate trap of the battlefield. It is the illusion that by compromising your identity, you can purchase a temporary social peace from people who refuse to heal their own internal wounds. Accommodating the fragility of an insecure room is a form of slow psychological self-sabotage. The moment you begin playing small to soothe someone else's bleeding ego, you become an active accomplice in the dilution of your own character. You traded your raw gravity for a false sense of safety, only to discover that insecure environments can never be fully satisfied. If you shrink yourself to 50% of who you are, the crowd will simply demand that you drop to 20%, because their insatiable need for validation requires you to be completely beneath them to feel secure. The hidden cost of trying to fit into a space that was meant for you to anchor is that you lose your grip on your baseline. You become just as fragmented, reactive, and chaotic as the people who were originally trying to borrow a piece of your unbothered aura. This constant tension between the desire to stand solid and the heavy temptation to bend creates a profound crisis of alignment. You find yourself standing at a critical psychological crossroads in your maturity. You can either continue to absorb the silent blows of a room that resents your consistency, or you can succumb to the pressure and allow your identity to be eroded by the demands of the average crowd. Navigating this exhaustion requires more than just mere endurance. It demands a total shift in how you process the warfare. The mental tax you pay is undeniable, but it only breaks you if you continue to view the hostility as a sign that there is something wrong with your behavior. To survive the exhausting weight of your own gravity, you must stop treating the crowd's reactions as a burden to carry, and instead look through the chaos to discover the true, unfiltered meaning behind their desperation. To survive the exhausting weight of your own gravity, you must execute a radical psychological reframing of the warfare around you. The whispers, the performative ignorance, the secret competitions, and the passive-aggressive status tests you encounter daily are not indicators of your failure. They are the ultimate, undisputed proof of your power. The room is not attacking you because you are flawed. It is reacting convulsively because your quiet consistency forces everyone else to confront their own internal chaos. Your detachment acts as an unyielding mirror. When people look at you and try to pull you down, they are merely projecting their deepest inadequacies onto your silence, because they cannot handle the painful contrast between your stability and their lack of self-control. Once you grasp this unfiltered science of human nature, the burden of carrying raw gravity completely dissolves. You realize that you are not responsible for curing the deep-seated discomfort of an insecure room. You do not owe anyone a diluted, shrunken version of your identity just to make them feel safe in their own skin. Your only job on this psychological battlefield is to remain absolutely anchored, letting the storm of their insecurity rage around you without ever allowing it to penetrate your baseline. Their forced avoidance and desperate attempts to break your vibe are involuntary confessions of their own misalignment. They are the loudest forms of validation they could possibly give you. Therefore, refuse to compromise your presence. Let them construct their fictional narratives to fill the silence of your black box. Let them run the exhausting invisible races that you aren't even competing in. Every time they check your face to find their emotional compass, or watch your hands waiting for a normal human fumble meet their gaze with flat indifference, your stillness is the anchor. Their chaos is merely the passing weather. Stop shrinking yourself down so average people feel comfortable. If you are ready to stop apologizing for your gravity and start mastering the dark, unfiltered science of human nature, subscribe to Think Vector right now. Let's keep navigating the depths of the human mind together. Stay sharp.